everyone.
Thank you.
For being in this room right now. Thank you for coming and being a part of this Vancouver convention. I am so delighted to be here with you. Just get this out of the way up front. I'm supposed to be praying out another group pretty soon, so I'm going to hang by the door and just slip out. It's not that I'm not interested, I'm very interested. So, the conversation today is fascinating to me. And do we have any Bible scholars in the room? You don't want to claim that? Okay, we got a Bible scholar. So what you're about to experience is mystical and informative. You know, we've all at some level studied the life of Jesus, although that wasn't his name. And I absolutely know he never said, "Verily, verily, I shall say unto thee." He never said any of those things. He didn't speak Old English. He spoke.
Didn't speak New English either.
He didn't speak any time. But what he did do was he created a way, a portal for people to understand the presence, the divine presence. And I don't know how Dale does this or how this came to him. We've talked about it, I still don't get it. But he has this deep understanding of that presence at that time. Like no one I've ever met, and I've met a number of people that really know about that period of time, and they can't do what this man can do. So you're in for an amazing experience. And I want to just tell you that I love this man to the depths of my being, that I believe in everything that he's doing, and I think that he is changing our understanding of the presence of God through these teachings of Yeshua. His children are students in our Light of Wisdom school in Asheville. He is an integral part of our community, but he's in the world doing things that only he can do. And you are really, truly blessed to be with him today, to be in this consciousness. So I love you.
All right. He didn't quite make me cry, but it's there. Build it up that high. I get one little thing sort of out of the way ahead of time, which is this. I'm going to ask you to listen in a way that you may not be used to. What I mean by that is this. Let go as much as you're able to of trying to understand everything that I'm saying and trying to keep up here with all the flow, the stream of consciousness of words that's going by. What'll happen, there's several things that are happening. One, and I'm not saying anybody here is not brilliant and smart, but I'm not really speaking to your mind, and I'm not really speaking from. It's sort of a frame that it comes through for me, but it's not really coming from my brain per se. That's sort of a point of entry or a projection of the consciousness that it's coming through. Just be open, okay? I'm going to reframe a few things several things to me that I feel are the ones I get asked about the most. Kind of like, maybe I might hit a couple of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the doormats, which is the third one. Meek, I get asked about that a lot. Just a little bit of just a little bit of insight from that is this. That word, when you hear that meek, it doesn't quite work. And it doesn't line up in any way whatsoever with religious science. My roots are in religious science. I discovered, or was first exposed to Aramaic at a religious science church in Florida, Center for Conscious Living, which is now Center for Spiritual Living, Florida Gulf Coast. Now led by Martin Preston. At that time, it was Reverend Pat Palmer. And I heard a guy named Dr. Michael Rice. And he said things that I had been seeing and almost hearing bobbing around in my field of vision since I was a child. And that third beatitude, though, is Tulehun la makike, dichanun nertun la arha. That word makike doesn't mean meek in the way that we think of meek. What it means is actually absolute humility. Humility is a word that comes from the Latin root humus, which is not a Middle Eastern chickpea dip that's great with pita and carrots. But rather, what that actually means in Latin is from or into the fertile earth. And everything that I'm going to speak about today is grounded. So I'm going to begin with a little bit of a story, and then we're going to do something called toning, which I'll explain when we get to it. We'll finish on time. I'll do what I can to try to get done a little bit early with the presentation part, so there's an openness for some questions. I don't lead the machine necessarily, so we'll see where it goes. But I had an experience that was when I first met Dr. Michael Rice. You'll hear a few names that might pop out of my mouth. And before I move forward, I should say this. I'm not Rocco Errico, but I wouldn't be here without Rocco. If Rocco didn't do what he's doing, I would not be here. I'm not George Lamza. But there's no way I could do what I'm doing without George, because he set the ball in motion in the West. I'm not Neil Douglas Klotz, I'm Dale. And one of the big challenges I've had over the last 7 years or so that I've been doing this full time was people think, oh, well, you know, we read the Lamza Bible, and yeah, the Aramaic stuff's great. I'm not teaching theology in any way, shape, or form. What I'm teaching is the radical regrounding, recalibration, and opening of consciousness through these teachings. And that's why I'm here today, is because you can see it on video or YouTube or hear it in a recording. There's a seat here we can spin around here. But it's not quite the same as being in the room. And it all boils down to a quote for me. This is a quote that I've had over my desk for some time now, from Gandhi. It says, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." And funny how 2 decades ago, when I started kind of experimenting with Aramaic, I think when I saw this at that time, I thought of the word sacrifice. There's something much different in it now for me. It's the reason I mentioned that third beatitude from the get-go is, for me, it's about just absolute humility, which means being connected and being rooted and being grounded in the earth and being open. So the story that I'm going to begin with is this. I was at a place called Heartland, which is the teaching center of Dr. Michael Rice. This would have been 1995. And I'm rummaging through a box. And this box has all kinds of cassette tapes. There are these little plastic things with 2 little screws, magnetic stuff. And I was seeing words like, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, look, Enrico Caruso, wasn't he an officer? And of course it said Rocco Errico.
Yes.
And then it said what I thought was George Alpaca, or George Lama, but it was George Lamza. And it was the tapes of these two people. And I remember my first experience hearing the Aramaic prayer of Yeshua. It was from Rocco. And Rocco has the most amazing voice. I get a lot of my best jokes from him. And on this tape, I just hear, he's got this way of really putting all of his being into it. And literally, it was like I simultaneously reduced down to a pinpoint, and yet at the same time, I was wider than I'd ever felt in my entire life. And I just immediately sat down and started learning that prayer, and I went and I walked down to Bull Shoals Lake. This is in the Ozark Mountains, southern Missouri. In the north it's Missouri, down there it's Missouri. And I slipped into a canoe and slid that canoe into the water. And I found myself on the water just completely still. I was just so still. I'd never felt, literally in my entire life, other than being a musician before that, I'd never felt so on purpose. Even though I was doing nothing other than sitting in a canoe on a lake. And I just cracked my eyes and I noticed that there was no ripples going away from the canoe. And I was just completely still. Again, everybody here has had that moment. And without even thinking about it, a sound starts coming out of my mouth. It sounded like this. And then I went to that word one more time. When I did the second one, I noticed that there was this interesting interplay happening, that there was ripples, those sound waves moving out from the canoe. And by that point, there was already some coming back in, and I noticed that there was the sound leaving my mouth, and yet I was also hearing the reflection coming back I had this beautiful give and take, expansion, contraction, opening, this amazing, incredible experience of this sound, basically from the inside out. So what we're going to do to begin is we're going to tone this sound together, okay? It looks like this. In the Western dialects, it would be called a boon. When you go further into the East, it's closer to a woon or a woon. Does that sound like anything? Oh, exactly. Oh. Now, I've actually had many experiences, not only with toning, but in meditation, very deep meditation, or with, I may talk about that later, in the Aramaic healing circle, what I do is a completely experiential experience with water, the true meaning of baptism pre-Christianity. It was actually Egyptian, it was not Christian. And anointing, which of course was also Egyptian, Coptic. But in those experiences sometimes I hear this hum. It's like a sacred universal hum. And I've noticed on several occasions that I can't tell if the sound is om or om, an M or an N. And when you start looking into the Sanskrit om, it has essentially the same meaning of consciousness that aum, that first word of the Lord's Prayer, has, which we simply look at as our Father. I'm going to show you a much different way of looking at it. The sound we're going to make, the first sound is ah. So what we're going to do is just begin by making this sound. How's that feel? And let go of any kind of stage fright. It doesn't have to sound like the Andrews Sisters or Manhattan Transfer or anything like that.
Does it matter whether it's a high or low pitch?
No. But it tends to fall into sort of a unison. Sometimes, if I'm in like a big city or something, you'll get the, I don't even want to say show-offs because it's so profound, that are hitting like 9ths, 13ths, and 11ths, and all these really crazy sort of harmonies that's really incredible. And then of course it does sound like Manhattan Transfer. But the tone's not quite so important. Yeah, we can spin this chair around. So the sound we're going to make is aoun. The first sound is ah, the second sound is O-O-N. And I just want to give you a little bit of direction, and that's this. Allow this to be as feminine as you can. What I mean by that is you're not going to be going ah, ah, ooh. What you want is flow. Okay, you want to be open and conscious of flow. Something like what I did earlier. And just let all those sounds flow together. We're going to do it 3 times. And then after those 3 times, just rest in silence, and I'm going to move directly into the Aramaic prayer of Yeshua, the Lord's Prayer, okay? But we're going to start with Aoun 3 times. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Do it 2 more times. Aware of the presence in the room. So 3 times with Aum, okay?